I died when a scrapyard magnet dropped 12 tons of old refrigerators on me. In my next life, my rare magnetic magic moved one sewing needle 3 centimeters while 2,000 students laughed. The needle rolled across the white testing table and stopped beside my finger. That was all. No flash, no storm of steel, no heroic music. 3 centimeters. Instructor Galen looked at the measuring crystal. Its pale light showed the same result to every student in the awakening hall. "Magnetic affinity," he announced. "Rare element, effective force 3 grams. Practical value, none." The laughter grew louder. Rufus leaned on his new sword. His blazing blade test had split a stone and set Galen's sleeve on fire. Galen had called it excellent. His sleeve had burned with impressive confidence. Rufus pointed at my needle. "Be careful, Jace. If it moves another 3 centimeters, we may need to evacuate the capital." The students around him laughed so hard that one boy dropped his certificate. I didn't answer. I looked beneath the table. The testing platform had 3 copper seals. The third activated resistance enchantments and was never used for awakening tests. It was glowing. "The resistance seal is active," I said. The closest assistant bent down. His face changed. "Instructor, he's right. The platform was not reset after the senior test." The laughter weakened. Galen did not look beneath the table. "A useful ability would overcome a small error. The Academy rules require a second attempt." His eyes settled on me. Galen had built his career on books declaring magnetism useless. His sponsors sold swords that resisted weapon control. A successful magnetic mage would turn his career into expensive toilet paper. He placed his hand on the ranking crystal. "Jace receives an F rank. Last place among 1,200 first-year students." My name appeared at the bottom of the great bronze board before the crowd, teachers, and recording crystals. There would be no quiet correction later. Galen smiled without warmth. "You may file an appeal after 1 year." 1 year? The assistant asked. "If he survives that long." The laughter returned. An academy servant brought the weapon tray. Rufus had received a steel sword. Freya, the best young fencer in the western provinces, had received a narrow blue blade. The servant reached me and found the tray empty. Galen picked up the sewing needle from the test. "A weapon suitable for your rank." He dropped it into my palm. Rufus clapped first. 2,000 students followed him. The needle was slightly bent. I turned it between my fingers. "Does this mean I do not need to pay the equipment fee?" The servant coughed to hide a laugh. Galen's smile vanished. "F-ranked students work for their equipment. Report to the scrapyard after sunset. You will sort rusted metal until the debt is paid." That was the second unfair decision in less than 1 minute. It was also the first useful thing anyone had given me. A scrapyard was a mountain of free metal. I closed my fingers around the needle. Someone near the front stopped laughing. Freya was watching my hand. During the test, the needle had curved away from a young page. Everyone else measured distance. Freya measured control. Our eyes met for 1 second. Then Rufus stepped between us. "Do not stare at him too long," he told her. "Your sword may lose 3 grams. Freya looked at his jeweled belt. "You could lose 3 kilograms and improve." This time, the laughter landed on Rufus. His ears turned red. I decided I liked her. When the hall emptied, I walked to the weakest dormitory with a bent needle, an F-rank certificate, and 6 copper coins. My room held 1 bed, 1 chair, and a window facing a wall close enough to touch. I sat on the bed and I placed the needle on my knee. The metal still felt warm from my mana. In my old world, I had worked around scrap cranes and cutters. I knew that perfect control over 3 grams was more useful than careless force over 3 tons. I guided a thread of mana into the needle. It rose. I moved it, left, right, up, and down. The motion was smooth. I stopped supplying mana. The needle remained in the air. I watched it for 10 breaths. It did not fall. Then a calm voice spoke inside my head. A hidden evolution has been detected. I did not shout. After being killed by refrigerators, a voice inside my skull ranked low on my list of strange events. The voice offered 3 paths. The magnetic knight strengthened the body. The weapon lord copied weapon skills. The metal emperor established permanent authority over metal, touched by my mana.
Only one could be chosen. Metal Emperor, he said. The room became silent. The needle dropped. For half a second, nothing happened. Then every nail, screw, latch, and coin in the room answered me.
I felt their shapes without looking. The voice explained the rule in simple words. Once my mana entered a metal object, that object would recognize me forever. Distance and foreign enchantments could weaken my command, but they could never erase my ownership. At the first stage, I could actively control 1 kilogram within 10 meters. To reach the next stage, I had to mark 10 kilograms of metal and hold my full limit in motion for 1 minute. I filled a 5-gram copper coin with mana, left it on the floor, and walked outside. When I called, it shot under the door, crossed 9 meters, and struck my palm. The effort was small, but the result made me smile. The academy believed control ended when Misna contact ended. Mine did not. I tested the remaining coins. All 6 floated around my fingers until I accelerated 1 into the wall. The student next door shouted, "Is someone attacking us?" "No, I'm doing accounting." He became quiet. People respected accounting. Moving several objects was harder than moving one. Acceleration consumed more mana than suspension, and sharp turns created pressure behind my eyes. Permanent control did not mean free control. That was good. A power without a price made people careless. Careless people eventually stood under 12 tons of refrigerators. At sunset, I reported to the scrapyard. Rusted swords, cracked armor, chains, and failed tools filled the yard behind the forge. The air smelled of coal and wet iron. A young woman sat on an anvil with a meat pie in one hand and a hammer in the other. She looked at my certificate. "F rank?" "That is what the expensive board said." She looked at my needle. "And that is your weapon?" "The academy was afraid to give me 2. She swallowed the last bite of pie. "I'm Nina. If you steal, I break your fingers. If you damage anything, I break Galen's because this was his idea." "That sounds fair." "It is the fairest rule in the academy." Nina pointed to 10 trays filled with iron nails, copper pieces, silver wire, and enchanted parts. "Sort them before midnight." I set my bent needle on the first tray and sent mana through it. The needle touched an iron nail. My mana crossed the point of contact. The nail answered. I stopped. That was the first hidden consequence. I did not need to touch metal with my skin. My mana only needed a path. I guided the needle across the tray. Every object it touched entered my awareness. Iron felt heavy, copper warm, and silver almost without resistance. Nina folded her arms. "Are you planning to threaten the scrap until it sorts itself?" "Yes." "Good. I wanted to see a confident plan before I went back to my pie." I raised my hand. 40 iron nails lifted from the tree. Nina forgot about the pie. The nails formed a line. Copper and silver rose after them and dropped into separate boxes. One tray emptied in less than a minute, then another. By the 7th tray, my hand shook. I had marked almost 8 kilograms, Nina noticed. "Your control is hurting you. Acceleration hurts. Holding is cheaper. How much can you hold?" 1 kilogram. She looked at the hundreds of pieces floating above the 8th tray. "That is not an F-rank answer. The board was very expensive. You already said that." "It remains true," she laughed. Nina brought exactly 2 kilograms of steel bearings. "Use these. If they fall, I prefer the box to my boots." I marked them one by one. The total reached 10 kilograms. I made 1 kilogram circle the anvil for a minute. Every second felt like a nail in my nerves. 3 bearings fell near the end, and I caught them above the floor. At 60 breaths, the pressure vanished. My active limit rose from 1 kilogram to 10. My range expanded from 10 meters to 20. The entire ring of bearings snapped into a perfect sphere. Nina's hammer slipped. I stopped its marked iron head and returned it to her palm. Nina stared at it. How many objects can you control? I have not found the number yet. How long does the mark last? I looked at the 6 copper coins hovering near the door. I had left them there without thinking. Forever? Her expression became serious. Do not tell Galen. I was not planning to send him a gift basket. She pulled a thick oak board from behind the forge. Speed test. She placed a board 10 meters away beside a timing crystal. I floated my needle beside my cheek. Nina moved behind the anvil. That seems unnecessary, I said. I have a deep respect for 3 grams. The first shot struck at 41 meters per second and entered halfway. I recalled the needle through the wood without recharging it. Nina added 2 more boards and returned behind the anvil. Are you sure? No. I made 6 accelerating circles. The needle broke the air with a sound like a small whip. It passed through all 3 boards and stopped 1 finger from the stone wall. The crystal showed 123 meters per second. Nina came out from behind the anvil. Galen rated this F. He did. I need to increase the price of hammers. Intelligence is becoming rare. She offered me 20 silver coins for the sorted trays and permission to use the scrapyard after lessons. I accepted both. 10 marked kilograms gave me weapons and a path to advance. Nina's access turned punishment into a resource mine. Only my public status remained at the bottom. The academy provided a solution before I reached the dormitory. Rufus was waiting in the training court with 30 F-ranked students around him. Freya stood near the gate. Galen had ordered every weak student to attend an evening lesson called Knowing Your Place. Rufus had volunteered to demonstrate. He had placed a wooden cup before each student. 10 silver for private instruction. Anyone who refuses may practice alone during the monster assessment. Rufus saw the forge pouch at my belt. Our needle mage has money now. I had a good evening. Then you can pay for everyone. No! Rufus drew his sword. Red light ran along its edge. Touch my shoulder with that needle and I will cancel the fee. Fail and you give me the pouch. What happens if I win? He spread his arms toward the students. Everyone sees the great Rufus defeated by a sewing tool. Freya spoke from the gate. Put it in writing. Rufus looked at her, then at the crowd. He could not retreat without losing face. He wrote the terms on a training slate. 30 students signed as witnesses. The official challenge activated the bronze ranking board. My name appeared at the bottom and Rufus stood in the top 20. He smiled. Begin. He rushed forward. His sword produced a red arc 3 meters long. I moved 1 step aside. The needle struck the flat of his blade. Metal touched metal. My mana crossed. The enchantment resisted like a closed door. Pain entered my fingers before it opened. The sword became mine. Rufus swung again. His own blade stopped in the middle of the strike. He pulled with both hands. The sword did not move. Rufus filled the weapon with fire mana. Red flames covered the edge. My mark remained beneath them. What did you do? I touched your sword. That is impossible. The board was very expensive. I lifted 2 fingers. The sword pulled Rufus across the court. His boots carved lines through the sand. Pride had replaced his survival instinct. The blade turned left. Rufus turned left. It turned right. He followed it like a large, angry flag. The F-ranked students began to laugh. I sent the sword upward. Rufus rose 1/2 meter, lost his grip, and landed in a water barrel beside the court. The sword flew on. It cut the buckle of his red cape, carried the cloth across the court, and pinned it to the center of the target. Then it turned point down and bowed to me. 30 students, Freya, and the ranking crystal saw it. Rufus climbed out of the barrel with water pouring from his hair. He looked like a wet cat that had inherited debt. My needle still hovered beside his shoulder. I moved it forward by 3 centimeters. The point touched his uniform. The challenge slate flashed green. Students shouted my name and ran to the bronze board. Rufus's friends discovered urgent reasons to stand far away. My rank climbed from 1,200 to 842. It had risen 358 places in one evening. Rufus stared at the board as if it had insulted his ancestors. I collected the 20 silver from the wager and placed them into the wooden cups. "No one pays for his lessons," I said. "Use this to repair the training equipment." The weak students looked at me differently. That mattered more than the number. Freya waited while the court emptied. You could have broken his arm. Then he would have learned nothing except how to eat with his other hand. Did he learn something now? We looked at Rufus. He was trying to pull his cape from the target while pretending not to hear the laughter. He learned that barrels contain water. Freya smiled. She took me to a food stall behind the dormitories. The owner served clear chicken broth with green onions, crisp dumplings, roasted pork, and soft bread brushed with garlic oil. Freya ordered enough for 3 people. "You fought," she said. "You need energy." "You did not fight." "Watching Rufus fly was exhausting." The dumplings cracked beneath my teeth. Hot meat and pepper filled my mouth. The broth warmed my hands. Freya noticed my numb fingers when I lifted the cup. She did not ask in front of the owner. She simply moved the bread closer to my good hand. That small action told me more about her than a long speech.
When we finished, I had 40 silver coins, 10 kilograms of marked metal, access to the scrapyard, and a public rank that no longer sat at the bottom. The day had begun with 2,000 people laughing at 3 centimeters. It ended with 30 people cheering for the same distance. I returned to my room after midnight.
Rufus's sword rested almost 3 kilometers away in the armory. I could still feel the thin, unbroken connection. Then another sensation rose beneath it. Far below the academy, beyond the foundations and the first dungeon level, something made of metal answered my awareness. It lay 187 meters underground. It was too heavy for me to move. It was also awake. I touched the bent needle on my table. Deep under my feet, the unknown object pulled back. The next morning, a spoon tried to enter my breakfast. I stopped it 1 finger from my eye. The dining hall became quiet. I had filled the spoon with mana while testing whether cheap steel carried my mark. Then a servant had taken it with the other utensils. When I thought about porridge, the spoon had answered from 18 meters away and flown across the hall. Permanent ownership was useful. Permanent ownership also required careful thoughts. I lowered the spoon into my bowl. Freya sat opposite me with 2 meat buns and a cup of tea. Most people ask for a spoon. Mine was eager. It crossed 4 tables. Good service. The students nearby stared at the spoon. News of the challenge had spread overnight. Some whispered needle mage, others whispered cheetah. 3 F-ranked students raised their cups to me. My public rank had changed, but rumor moved faster than bronze. Rufus entered the dining hall with his cape folded beneath one arm. It had a round hole in the center where his own sword had pinned it to the target. He saw me. The spoon rose. Rufus changed direction and chose a table on the far side of the hall. Freya bit into a bun. "You have created fear." "I have created good manners." An academy bell rang before I could finish the porridge. A servant placed a sealed notice beside my bowl. Instructor Galen had challenged the result of the previous night. He claimed an F-ranked student could not legally gain more than 300 places through one duel. My new position would be removed unless I passed the bronze combat trial before sunset. The trial normally required 1 month of training. Galen had given me 9 hours. Freya read the notice. "He wants the ranking board to erase your victory." "Then I need a bronze badge. The trial uses metal guardians." "That sounds considerate." Freya looked at the spoon. "For you, perhaps." I went to the forge. Nina had already heard. She stood beside a scale with 10 linked bundles of scrap. Each bundle weighed 10 kilograms. "The entire academy is talking about your duel," she said. "A half think you used a forbidden artifact. The other half want to buy needles." "Which half are you?" "I bought needles before the price increased." She showed me a wooden case containing 20 polished steel needles. Each was straight, balanced, and heavier than the bent one Galen had given me. "Payment? Advertising. If you survive, tell people where they came from." I marked the first needle. It joined the bent needle beside my wrist. 21 points were better than 1. They were also 21 chances to make a mistake. I moved them in a circle, then a line, then 2 crossing waves. Their paths remained clean. Nina kicked the nearest scrap bundle. "Your current limit is 10 kilograms. You said the next stage needs 100 marked." "Correct. Can your mana pass through a chain?" It passed from a needle into Rufus's sword. She connected the bundles with iron wire. "Then let us see whether Galen accidentally gave you the best training ground in the academy." I placed one hand on the first link. Mana entered the chain. The connection divided at every knot. Broken sword pieces, plates, gears, and nails appeared inside my awareness. The number of separate shapes was painful. It felt as if 1,000 cold fingers pressed against my mind. I did not try to move them. I only marked them. 10 kilograms became 20. 20 became 40. At 60, my nose began to bleed. Nina offered me a cloth. "We can stop. Galen will not," I continued. At 80 kilograms, the metal shapes blurred together. At 90, my left arm went numb. When the final bundle answered, the calm voice confirmed 100 marked kilograms. "I still needed to move my full limit of 10 kilograms for 1 minute. Nina placed 10 iron plates on the floor. I raised them. The plates formed a wall around me. They rotated slowly at first. I increased their speed until air moved through the forge. 20 breaths passed, then 40. My arm felt like a length of burned rope. At 55, one plate tilted toward Nina. She did not move. I corrected it. At 60, every plate locked in place. My active limit rose to 100 kilograms. My useful range expanded to 50 meters. The plates dropped together and shook dust from the roof. Nina looked at the linked scrap, then at me. "Yesterday you moved 3 grams in public." Yesterday was long. She opened another box. Inside were 960 copper coins. Together they weighed 4 kilograms and 800 grams. Each coin had a small hole near its rim. "Scale armor," Nina said. "Real armor limits movement. These can move before a strike reaches you. Price, 20 silver. That is half my money. Being alive improves long-term earnings." I paid her. We threaded the coins on thin steel wire. I marked each piece. When I raised my hand, the strands wrapped around my chest, shoulders, and arms. The coins overlapped like fish scales. Nina hit me with a hammer. The scales moved to meet it. The impact pushed me back 1 step, but the copper spread the force across my chest. "You could warn me," I said. "Then you would tense." I was discussing business. Monsters rarely wait for a fair price. She struck again. This time the scales left my chest before the hammer arrived. They formed a curved shield and caught the iron head. Because I had marked the hammer the previous night, I stopped it too. Nina pulled. The hammer stayed in the air. "Give that back. The price of armor has increased." She threw a glove at me. It was not metal. It hit my face. That was useful information. By noon, the bronze arena was full. 600 students sat on stone benches. 3 recording crystals floated above the sand. The live ranking board showed my name in white and the words "Provisional Challenge" beside it. Galen stood in the judge's box. Rufus stood beside him in polished armor. He had been appointed student evaluator. That was not normal. Freya took a place near the front. Nina stood at the rear with both hands black from coal. 30 F-ranked students occupied one full row. They had brought the wooden cups from the previous night and were using them as drums. Galen raised his voice. The bronze trial is simple. The candidate must cross 50 meters and strike the bell. 12 training hounds will prevent him. The machines are safe. The gates opened. 12 iron hounds entered the arena. Each weighed 18 kilograms. Their bodies were low and wide. Steel teeth filled their mouths. Blue safety crystals shone in their chests. The total mass was 216 kilograms. I could control less than half. Galen smiled. The candidate may begin. I stepped onto the sand. My coin armor hid beneath a plain gray robe. 21 needles rested inside my sleeve. The hounds spread into 3 groups. I sent the bent needle into the ground. The arena sand was only a thin layer. Beneath it lay an iron service track connecting every training machine. My needle touched the track. Mana ran outward. 1 hound became visible to me. Then 4, then 12. Their resistance enchantments pushed back, but my mana did not need to win a long battle. It needed to enter once. The marks settled. Galen lowered his hand. The hounds charged. 600 students shouted. I did not pull on their bodies. Moving 216 kilograms would crush my channels. I pulled on 12 locking pins. Together, they weighed less than 1 kilogram. Every hound lost control of its rear legs.
The machine slid across the sand in a line. 2 spun in circles. 1 passed me with its front legs running and its back end sitting down.
It looked like a table that had discovered anger. Laughter rolled across the arena. I walked toward the bell. Galen touched something inside his sleeve. The blue crystals in the hounds turned red. Their locking pins snapped. Fresh blades extended from their legs. Mana flames burned through their joints. The machines rose again. These were not bronze settings. They were war settings. The first hound jumped. My robe opened. 960 copper coins burst into the air. The crowd stopped laughing. The coins formed a shield above me. Steel teeth struck copper scales with a sound like a bag of pans falling downstairs. The shield bent. I turned it. The hound rolled aside and crashed into a second machine. 3 more attacked from the left. I sent 6 needles into their joints. The needles did not need to pierce armor. Each only needed to touch. I seized the gears behind their front legs and reversed them. The hounds ran backward. 1 climbed over another. The 3rd chased its own tail at full speed and dug a circular trench in the sand. The F-ranked students beat their cups on the bench. Jace! 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 My name reached the judge's box. Galen's face tightened. Rufus watched the copper scales around me. He no longer looked amused. The remaining hounds surrounded me. I divided the coins into 4 shields. Maintaining separate shapes pressed hot lines through my arms. My vision shook. The machines attacked together. I dropped flat. The 4 shields moved inward. The hounds collided above me. Steel bodies struck steel bodies. Teeth locked in armor. Legs tangled. All 12 machines fell into a single pile. I rose and walked past them. The bronze bell waited 10 meters away. Then 1 red crystal screamed. The largest hound tore itself free. It did not attack me. It turned toward the judge's box. Rufus stood at the lower rail. The machine jumped. He drew his flaming sword, but fear made the strike slow. The hound hit the rail and sent him backward. Galen stepped away. The safe choice was clear. I could ring the bell while the machine attacked Rufus. The trial would end. My enemy might lose an arm and no one could blame me. Freya looked at me. She didn't shout. She wanted to know what I would choose. I turned away from the bell. All 960 coins flew upward. They wrapped around the hound in 10 crossing bands. I used 80 kilograms of active force and pulled. The machine stopped in the air with its teeth 1 hand from Rufus's face. His hair moved in the heat from its mouth. I closed my fist. The copper bands dragged the hound down. It struck the sand hard enough to crack the service track. The red crystal shattered. Silence covered the arena. Rufus remained on the floor. I walked to the bell and touched it with my bent needle. The sound rolled over 600 witnesses. The ranking board turned gold. My provisional challenge became a legal bronze victory. My name climbed from 842 to 216. The F-ranked row screamed until one wooden cup broke. Nina raised both fists. Freya smiled. Even students who had called me a cheater stood to look at the board. Galen remained seated. He waited for the noise to weaken. The candidate used an unknown artifact, he said. The result requires investigation. Booze rose from the benches. He lifted his hand. The machines entered war mode because his control damaged them. I felt a small metal object inside his sleeve. I called it. A red key flew from his robe and crossed the arena. It stopped above my palm. The war-setting seal was stamped on his head. Every recording crystal turned toward Galen. The crowd made one long sound. It was not laughter. It was worse. Recognition. Galen had activated the lethal setting himself. He stood too quickly and struck the judge's table with his knee. The table survived. His dignity did not. "That key was placed in my robe," he said. Rufus slowly rose behind him. His face was pale. "I saw you use it," he said. Galen turned. The boy he had chosen as evaluator had become a witness against him. Rufus looked at me. I had just saved his face from metal teeth. Gratitude and humiliation fought inside his expression. Neither looked comfortable. The head judge took the key. "The bronze result stands. Instructor Galen will submit a written explanation." 3 gold coins were placed in my hand as trial reward. My balance had increased from 20 silver to 3 gold and 20 silver. I received a bronze badge and permission to enter the first 3 dungeon levels. 600 people watched it happen. Public doubt did not vanish, but it changed shape. That morning, people had asked how an F-rank cheated. That afternoon, they asked why Galen feared me. At the forge, Nina cooked dinner in a broad iron pan. Chunks of beef hissed in butter with onions, black pepper, and mushrooms. Freya brought round loaves of bread. I added the last of my cheap cheese, which Nina called an act of violence against the beef. We ate beside the furnace. The bread had a hard crust and a warm center. The meat was soft enough to cut with a spoon. Mushroom sauce filled every crack in the bread. My hand shook when I lifted the bowl. Freya took it, placed it on the bench, and wrapped my fingers in cool cloth. "You used too much force," she said. 80 kilograms for 3 seconds. "You counted?" "Counting makes pain useful." Nina pointed her fork at me. "Pain is usually a warning. It can be 2 things." Freya tightened the cloth. "Tomorrow it can be a warning first." There was no praise in her voice, no fear either. She spoke as if there would obviously be a tomorrow, and she expected me to reach it. I liked that more than cheering. After dinner, Nina showed me 12 tiny metal beetles. She had built them from springs, copper wings, and smooth iron shells. If you can move parts separately, these can crawl into places where a sword cannot. I marked the first beetle. Through its feet, I felt tiny vibrations in the anvil. Nina tapped the far side with one finger. The vibration crossed the iron and entered my awareness. I closed my eyes. 3 taps. She tapped twice. 2. Freya moved to the outer wall and touched it with the pommel of her sword. The wall connected to a support beam. The beam connected to the roof. The roof joined an iron rain channel that ran around the forge. I felt her single tap from 15 meters away. Marked metal was not only a weapon, it was a sense. I sent the beetle through a crack near the floor. Its feet touched an old heating pipe. The pipe continued beneath the academy offices. Thousands of vibrations reached me. Doors closed. Boots crossed floors. Chairs moved. At first it was noise. Then I separated patterns. 2 sets of footsteps entered the room above the pipe. One belonged to Galen. I recognized the uneven rhythm from the arena after he struck his knee. The other was slower and heavier. Their voices vibrated through the metal wall. I could not hear every word, but I caught enough. "The bronze badge gives him access," the stranger said. Galen answered, "He will enter the Iron Crypt tomorrow." Use the red route. That level is sealed. Open it. A coin moved across a desk, then another. Gold. A great deal of gold. The stranger continued. 12 students enter, 11 return. Freya saw my expression. What is it? I opened my eyes. Before I could answer, the bronze assignment board outside the forge rang. My new dungeon team appeared on its surface. There were 12 names. Freya's stood directly beneath mine. Rufus's name was third. The remaining 9 belonged to bronze students who had never gone below the first dungeon level. Galen had not chosen a team. He had chosen witnesses. At dawn, more than 1,000 students gathered around the dungeon plaza. Food sellers, betting clerks, and 3 viewing crystals turned our descent into public entertainment. The public board gave our chance of returning without injury as 68%. Nina looked at the number. That board was made by the same people who rated you F. Then we should prepare for 32%. She tightened 20 polished needles to my forearm. 12 metal beetles clung beneath my coin armor. Bring them back, she said. The beetles? The metal? I worked all night. Freya joined us with a travel pack and her blue sword. She means both. Nina handed her a loaf filled with meat and onions. Make sure he eats before controlling a mountain. I have never tried to control a mountain. Both women looked at me. Yet, I added. Rufus arrived with a repaired cape. Someone in the crowd raised a water barrel. He ignored it with great effort. Galen appointed me deputy leader, Rufus said. Freya showed him the assignment. I lead. Jace controls metal. What do you do? I provide fire. Good, I said. Breakfast may need warming. The other 9 students arrived. They carried spears, shields, bows, and 2 healing staffs with silver cores. I asked permission to touch every metal weapon. One boy stepped back. Why? If you drop it, I can return it. Rufus offered his sword first. Everyone saw. The boy stopped arguing. I marked 31 weapons and pieces of armor. Their total mass was less than 100 kilograms. My active limit could carry them all, but doing so would leave nothing for defense. The dungeon gate opened. Cold air crossed the plaza. Freya entered first. I followed. Rufus and the 9 bronze students came behind us. The gate closed. Our recording crystal floated above the group in a steel ring. Thousands of people on the plaza could see through it. The iron crypt resembled a city for the dead. Black houses lined a narrow road. Chains hung between towers and swords marked graves. Metal surrounded me. Most of it had slept for centuries. I sent 2 beetles ahead. Their feet carried mana through connected drains, grates, and nails, building a map inside my mind. Freya watched the beetles vanish into the dark. What do you see? 3 passages, 1 broken gate, 47 metal shapes moving toward us. The bronze students raised their weapons. Iron skeletons came from the houses. There were 47. Each wore a helmet and carried a short blade. Blue fire burned inside empty eye sockets. Rufus smiled. Finally, he charged before Freya gave an order. His first strikes destroyed 3 skeletons. The creatures surrounded him.
He provides fire, I said. Freya sighed. Provides support. I called the broken blades from the graves. 30 rusted swords rose behind the skeletons. The watching bronze students forgot to attack.
I sent the swords into helmets, knees, and weapon hands, then removed the small pins holding joints together. Arms fell, legs separated, heads rolled across the road. Rufus raised his sword for a finishing strike. Nothing remained to hit. 1 skeleton head bit his boot. Freya stabbed it. The recording crystal captured everything, yeah? You took my battle, Rufus said. You still have the boot. The team laughed. Rufus kicked the head into a doorway and walked on. The public board inside the crystal changed. Our expected survival rose from 68% to 76%. The road should have led to the first-level rest station. Instead, a red gate waited at the end. Freya stopped. This is not on the route. The recording crystal flashed. Its image became dark. At the same moment, the gate behind us slammed shut. Red mana covered both doors. The 9 bronze students shouted, struck the wall, and accused me of damaging the root. Rufus did not join them. He touched the red seal. "War setting," he said. "The same type Galen used yesterday." Everyone became quiet. I released one beetle near the rear gate. It crawled into the lock and touched the internal key. The metal carried Galen's fresh Mane signature. "The route was changed from outside," I said. "Someone expects 11 of us to return." "Which one is supposed to die?" the youngest asked. Everyone looked at me. "That seems rude," I said. Freya drew her sword. "Can you open the gate?" "Yes." I touched the lock through the beetle. "In 4 hours." "The seal is stronger than my current range. The faster path is forward. The red route reconnects with the normal exit below." "How do you know?" Rufus asked. I pointed at the old chains disappearing into the wall. "The builders used metal supports. I can feel the route." One student gripped his spear. "You expect us to trust an F rank?" "He stopped the hounds from eating Rufus," Freya said. Rufus frowned. "That example is becoming popular." "It is clear." He looked at the sealed gate, then offered me his sword again. "Lead." The others followed. The red gate opened as we approached. Beyond it, stairs descended far below the legal bronze levels. The air grew colder. The strange metal signal beneath the academy grew stronger. We reached a bridge, crossing a black pit. Iron statues stood along both sides. Each statue held 2 swords. My beetles found no movement. Rufus stepped onto the bridge. Every statue turned its head. "Your beetles missed that," he said. The statues were not moving when they checked. "Excellent." 20 statues attacked. Freya moved first. Her blue sword cut a wrist. She turned beneath another blade and drove the statue from the bridge. Rufus released a wave of fire. The front statues glowed red but continued walking. "Fire is not working," he said. "Breakfast remains possible." I sent needles between Freya's strikes. Each point touched a statue and returned. I marked 6, then 12, then all 20. Their total mass exceeded 1,000 kilograms. I could not command their bodies. I commanded their swords. 40 blades froze. The statues pulled. The weapons left their hands. I raised my full 100 kilograms in a rotating sword ring. "Move!" Freya shouted. They remembered the battle. Spears struck exposed joints. Arrows entered glowing eye holes. Rufus cut through heated legs. Freya moved between the statues like blue light. I held the sword ring as the team fought. At 30 breaths, I drove 8 blades through iron knees. At 50, my armor shook. The last statue reached Freya. Its empty hand closed around her throat. I could not add more weight. I released every sword except one. While the others fell, that blade cut through the statue's elbow. Freya dropped, rolled, and removed its head. 60 breaths passed. The class voice confirmed my advancement. My active limit rose from 100 kilograms to 1,000. My range expanded to 200 meters. 40 falling swords and every broken statue stopped. 1,000 kilograms of iron filled the air. The team became silent. I compressed the parts into a sphere with a ring of swords and sent it down the bridge. The remaining enemies disappeared beneath it. Iron struck iron. The bridge shook. A statue head flew upward, looked at Rufus with blue fire, and vanished into the pit. Rufus lowered his flaming sword. I was about to do that. With breakfast, fire. The recording crystal remained dark, but 11 students had seen the 1-ton rise. They now looked at me as the safest place in the dungeon. We reached a dry guard room after midday. Freya ordered a rest. No one argued. Nina's loaf contained smoked meat, sweet onions, and cheese. The others shared dried fruit, eggs, and pepper sauce. Rufus heated a flat stone with his fire. We toasted the bread until the crust became crisp and the cheese ran into the meat. The smell filled the cold room. "You finally provided fire," I told him. He handed me the darkest piece. "Your gratitude moves me." The hot meal repaired more courage than a speech. Someone copied the statue head staring at Rufus. Even he laughed. Freya sat beside me and unwrapped my right hand. Thin red lines ran from my palm to my wrist. 1,000 kilograms, she asked, for less than a second. Your skin disagrees. She applied cool healing paste. Why did you turn back for Rufus yesterday? She asked quietly. Because I could. That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters when something has teeth near a person's face. Freya tied the cloth. I saw you move the needle away from the page during the awakening test. I looked at her. Everyone saw weakness. I saw you protect someone who would never know. The room felt warmer than Rufus's stone. Before I could answer, one metal beetle tapped against my armor. Movement approached through the floor, heavy movement. Many legs. I stood. Meal finished. The far wall exploded. A steel centipede entered through the stones. Its body filled the corridor. 72 armored segments scraped against the walls. Each segment carried 4 blade-like legs. A furnace burned behind its jaws. The creature weighed more than 800 kilograms. The bronze students formed a line. The centipede released steam. Our toasted bread vanished beneath grey dust. Rufus looked at the ruined meal. His fire doubled. Now I am angry. The creature charged. Freya ordered the team to split. My beetles marked one segment after another. Its enchantment tried to burn them out, but ownership remained. Arrows melted against its eyes. Its furnace swallowed Rufus's fire. Freya removed one leg, but 3 took its place. The centipede slammed its body sideways. 5 students flew into the wall. I seized 400 kilograms and pulled. Pain opened across my palm as the floor cracked. The centipede dragged me forward. My boots crossed the stones. Freya caught my belt. Rufus and the others formed a chain behind her. The creature pulled all of us. It is winning, Rufus said through his teeth. It has more legs. Do something. I felt 40 statue swords, broken armor, wall chains, and the metal ring around our recording crystal. I called all of it. The blocked crystal tore free from the dead red spell and flew into the corridor. Its image returned. The Academy Plaza appeared in its surface. Thousands watched as 40 swords arrived. I released the centipede's body and seized its leg joints instead. The creature rushed forward. The sword swarm struck. 20 blades removed its legs. 20 entered the gaps between segments. The centipede collapsed 1 meter before me. Its jaws remained open. I raised 800 kilograms. The entire creature floated. Students screamed through the crystal as I turned the creature over. Rufus walked beneath it and placed one hand against the exposed furnace. "Breakfast," he said. He released all his fire. The furnace burst.
Blue flame crossed every segment from inside. Freya jumped, ran along the creature's underside, and drove her sword through the central core. The centipede stopped moving. I lowered it carefully. The recording crystal circled us. The public survival estimate changed from 76% to 94%. The team stared at the number. Rufus wiped dust from his face.
It had better become 100. The illegal level held magnetic ore, and old weapons worth more than 100 gold. I marked 900 kilograms and gained a permanent map. At the exit, we found the internal red-wrote seal. Galen's personal crest glowed on its metal frame. I placed it inside the centipede's hollow head. We returned to the surface after sunset. The plaza was so crowded that teachers stood on walls. Everyone had seen the final battle and the marked seal. When the gate opened, all 12 of us walked out. The crowd counted, then it erupted. Galen stood on the tribunal platform with the head judge. His face changed when the steel centipede's head floated through the gate behind us. I dropped it before the platform. The red-route seal rolled from its jaws. The head judge picked it up. "Instructor Galen, this bears your crest. It was stolen. Before descending, I had sent a beetle through the heating pipe into Galen's office.
It had marked the bribe coin now in his pocket. I called it. Gold tore through the cloth and flew into my hand. The coin carried Galen's account mark and the seal of the Imperial Arsenal. The viewing crystals moved closer. Galen covered the hole in his robe. That did not improve the image. The head judge compared the account mark with the red seal. The signature is identical.
More than 1,000 students looked back at Galen. Rufus stepped onto the platform. He activated war mode during the bronze trial, he said. He also assigned the red route. Galen stared at the student he had once praised. Your family contract depends on my support. Rufus touched the stitched hole in his cape. Then it was a bad contract. The weak students cheered first. The rest followed. The head judge removed Galen's steel badge. I slid it into an empty water cup. Rufus looked at me. Was that necessary? The cup was available. Galen lost his position before the entire academy. Guards escorted him from the platform while the bronze board erased his title. My map of the red route earned 30 gold. My share of the ore was stored in Nina's forge. My ranking rose from 216 to 29. The board added a public name beneath mine. Sword Swarm. Thousands of students repeated it. 3 days earlier, they had laughed because I could pull one needle. Now they argued over how many swords I could command. That night, the team ate victory stew in the forge. Nina filled a pot with beef, potatoes, carrots, garlic, and dark beer. Rufus supplied fire without being asked. The bronze students brought cakes. Freya saved the crisp corner piece for me. It should have felt safe. Instead, every marked weapon in the forge began to vibrate. The cups shook. The spoons turned toward the floor. My bent needle pointed straight down. Far beneath the dungeon level we had escaped, the unknown metal moved for the first time. Stone broke around it. A voice entered my mind. The false masters chained me for 300 years. The black signal rose by 1 meter. Then another. Call me, my king. I did not call it. 1,000 kilograms was my active limit. The thing below weighed more than that, and it spoke like a prisoner who had spent 3 centuries planning his first conversation. Name, I said. The answer traveled through every marked blade around me. Onyx. Nina gripped her hammer. Freya drew her sword. Rufus moved his stew away from the vibrating table. Can they hear you? I asked. They hear my chains. The others heard only the metal shaking. I asked what he was. The blade of the true demon king. That was not a useful answer. It was a large title wearing no explanation. Why do you call me king? Metal remembers its master. The signal pulled upward again. Stone groaned far below. I pressed my will against Onyx and ordered him to stop. The black presence became still. My command had reached him across almost 200 meters. I could not lift his mass, but the order itself had been recognized. That frightened me more than the voice. Remain where you are, I said. As you command. The weapons in the forge stopped vibrating. Rufus looked at me. Did you just argue with the floor? The floor lost. Nina touched the table. What is Onyx? I told them. No one finished the stew. At sunrise, the capital arrived. 6 black carriages entered the academy through the eastern gate. Imperial soldiers marched beside them in mirror-bright armor. Their swords carried so many enchantments that the air around the blades looked bent. Inspector Magnus left the first carriage. He was broad, gray-haired, and dressed in a dark uniform with no decoration except one gold key at his throat. He did not look like a man who enjoyed public speeches. He looked like a man who ended them. Galen's gold bribe coin had carried the seal of his office. The academy expected an arrest. Magnus ordered a public assembly instead. 2,000 students gathered in the awakening hall where my needle had moved 3 centimeters. The same testing table stood at the center. Someone had finally turned off the resistance seal. Magnus placed a contract on the table. Jace, he said, You have demonstrated strategic control over enchanted weapons. The Imperial Arsenal offers 100 gold in advance, full training, private quarters, and protection for your associates." Whispers crossed the hall. 100 gold sounded like a fortune. I read the smaller lines. "The Arsenal receives 90% of all future income for the cost of your development. The contract has no end date. The Northern War has no end date. It grants the Arsenal ownership of every marked object. Weapons used for Imperial defense belong to the Empire." I reached the final line. "If I die, my body becomes Arsenal property." Magnus met my eyes. "We would need to study why your class failed." The hall became very quiet. He did not hide the ugly terms. That made him more dangerous than Galen. "How many died at the Northern Fortress?" I asked. 814 last month." "You believe my power can prevent another loss. I believe uncontrolled power creates a larger one." His motive was not greed. It was certainty. Magnus had seen a frontier collapse and decided that choice was a luxury the Empire could no longer afford. I understood him. I still pushed the contract back. "If you need help, ask for help. You are asking to own me. I am offering rank, wealth, and purpose. You are offering 10% of my own life." Someone laughed. Then hundreds did. Magnus waited until the noise ended. "Refusal will force an examination of whether your magic is legal." Freya stepped out of the student line. Nina stood beside her in a clean forge apron. She had clearly tried to remove the coal. The coal had won. Rufus joined them last. Magnus looked at the three witnesses. "The examination begins during today's tournament qualification," he said. "If Jace cannot prove safe control, every object carrying his mana will be seized." He turned and left the hall. The contract remained on the table. I marked its small iron binding clip. The Academy tournament had been moved forward because half the capital was already watching through public crystals. 8 ranking arenas operated at once. The top 8 students would enter the final stage the next day. My first opponent was Rufus. When our names appeared together, the crowd became loud enough to shake dust from the arches. Rufus met me in the waiting tunnel. "Did you arrange this?" he asked. "I cannot control paper." "Good. I want one honest fight." "No barrels?" "There are no barrels in the arena." He had checked. We entered before 10,000 spectators. Freya had already won her qualifier. She watched from the fighters' gallery. Nina stood beside a covered metal cage near the equipment gate. Princess Celia occupied the royal platform. She was younger than Magnus and wore plain white armor. A colorless sword rested across her knees. The weapon gave me no metal signal at all. That was unusual. The signal bell rang. Rufus attacked without a speech. He had learned. Fire covered his sword. He released 3 arcs before crossing half the arena. My copper scales rose from beneath my coat. They formed 3 slanted shields. Each fire arc struck copper and slid into the sand. Rufus reached me behind the flames. His blade changed direction twice in one breath. I controlled the sword, but he expected that. He released the hilt before my pull and struck with a fire-covered fist. The blow hit my coin armor. Copper scales spread the force, but I still crossed 4 meters. The crowd roared. Rufus called his sword back with a flame thread. My permanent mark pulled one way. His class pulled the other. The blade stopped between us. "I trained without it," he said. He attacked with both hands burning. I sent 20 needles. He blocked 6 with fire and avoided 8. 6 touched his armor. I did not pull the full breastplate. It weighed too much and protected his body. I opened the small metal buckles at his knees. His leg armor fell around his boots. Rufus took 1 step and tripped. He rolled before the needles reached him and released a ring of fire from the ground. The heat softened my copper scales. I pulled them away before they burned me. The crowd saw my defense open. Rufus rushed through the fire. I called his sword. It flew toward me. He caught the hilt as it passed and used my pole to increase his speed. That was clever. The flaming edge reached my throat. My bent needle touched his red crystal. I moved the tiny metal frame inside it by 3 millimeters. The enchantment shut down. Fire vanished. I turned the sword sideways and stopped the flat against my neck. Rufus pushed. I pushed back. The blade shook between us. Then 960 coins rose behind him. They formed a large hand. The copper hand tapped his shoulder. Rufus looked back. It flicked him across the arena. He landed on his feet, slid, and stopped 1 step from the boundary. The crowd laughed and cheered. Rufus looked at the empty space behind him, then at me. A hand. No barrels. He began laughing. He dropped his sword and raised both palms. I yield. The signal crystal declared my victory. This humiliation did not destroy him. It freed him. Rufus had fought without Galen, without a family contract, and without cheating. The crowd applauded him when he left. My rank rose from 29 to 12. Magnus did not applaud either of us. My second qualifier was scheduled after noon. Before it began, Princess Celia entered the preparation yard alone. Her white sword rested at her side. "Control it," she said. "I cannot feel it."
"Try." I sent mana through 1 needle and touched the blade. Nothing crossed. The surface looked like silver, but it had no metallic structure. "Star glass and dragon bone," Celia said.
No iron, no silver, no copper. An expensive way to avoid me. It was forged 200 years before you were born. Very careful planning. Her mouth moved by half a smile. She drew the sword. I raised my coin shield. Celia cut through it. Copper scales separated like water. The edge stopped beside my cheek. "Your authority is absolute, only over metal," she said. "That is enough metal for most days. Tomorrow may not be most days." She sheathed the blade. Celia had come to test a limit, not offer romance. I respected that. A visible weakness was a shield against arrogance. Magnus entered with 12 arsenal guards. "Princess, this student is under imperial examination." "Then examine him," Celia said. "Do not pretend he has no counter." She walked past him. Magnus watched her go. Royal blood mistakes exceptions for safety. Inspectors mistake contracts for chains. Chains hold the northern gate. People hold it. His expression did not change, but the gold key at his throat clicked once. After Galen's sabotage, the head judge had ordered every tournament weapon inspected. Nina linked the academy racks, and I marked 7,000 kilograms before noon. The second examination took place in the central arena. 1,000 enchanted swords stood on iron racks around the sand. They belonged to the Imperial Arsenal and raised my mark total beyond 10,000 kilograms. Magnus addressed the spectators. "Foreign control cannot survive Imperial cleansing enchantments. If Jace's marks remain, his ability is a strategic curse and falls under Arsenal law. If they vanish, his claims are fraudulent." Both results gave him an excuse to seize me. The crowd understood. Boos came from the F-ranked section. Magnus ignored them. "You may touch 1 weapon." Nina raised her hand from the equipment gate. "The racks touch." Magnus looked at the iron supports connecting all 1,000 swords. He understood too late. I placed the bent needle against the nearest rack. Mana entered the iron. The arsenal enchantments burned white. They tried to cut every path. I kept the needle in place. 1 sword answered. Then 10, then 100. Cold pain filled my arm. The cleansing spells grew brighter. At 500 swords, skin split across my palm. Freya moved to the arena rail. I saw her but did not stop. The connection reached the last rack. 1,000 swords became mine. The crowd waited. Magnus placed his ceremonial sword across the first rack and lifted the gold key. Cleanse. White fire covered the arena. My mana vanished from the surface of every blade. The permanent marks remained beneath. I raised 1,000 kilograms of swords. More than 300 blades left their racks. I held them above the arena. 1 breath, 10. The weight drove heat through both shoulders. 20. Magnus ordered a second cleansing. The swords remained. 30. The audience began counting aloud. 40. Freya counted with them. 50. Nina opened the covered cage. 12 metal birds flew out and joined the formation. The viewing crystals followed them. Every bird carried the mark of our forge. 60. My active limit rose from 1,000 kilograms to 10,000. My range expanded to 500 meters. I lifted the remaining swords. All 1,000 rose together. The sound of metal filled the academy. Magnus lowered his key. 3,000 kilograms of enchanted steel formed a spiral above me. The spectators stood. I turned my wrist. Every sword pointed toward the inspector. His guards drew their weapons. Those weapons had rested against the connected racks. They left the guards' hands and joined the spiral. Magnus drew his ceremonial blade. The same thing happened. For the first time, his face changed. His sword flew across the arena, cut the iron clip from his contract, and sliced the paper into 10 strips. The strips fell around him. Then 1,000 swords turned point down. They bowed. 10,000 spectators became silent. The great sword hall of the Imperial Arsenal had sent its finest weapons to judge me. Its weapons had chosen a side. The silence broke. The roar reached the city beyond the walls. Magnus stood inside the ring of paper. His own sword returned and planted itself in the sand before him. The handle pointed toward me. I did not take it. I passed your examination, I said. Princess Celia rose on the royal platform. He did. Magnus looked at the thousands of witnesses and the recording crystals carrying the scene to the capital. He could not change the result in private. Safe control remains unproven, he said. Then watch tomorrow. My ranking climbed from 12 to 4. The public board placed me among the tournament finalists beside Freya and Celia. Nina's 12 metal birds had crossed the arena during the most watched moment of the year. Before we reached the forge, the royal guard ordered 100 familiars for 600 gold. My half was 300. 3 days earlier, 6 copper coins had been my entire fortune. Now I had 333 gold, a 10-ton control limit, a national audience, and an imperial inspector who wanted to place my body in a locked room. Progress often created new problems. The forge celebration began after sunset. Nina roasted chicken with garlic, butter, and red herbs. Rufus brought sweet berry tea. Celia sent white bread from the royal kitchen but did not attend. That simple choice prevented 6 new rumors and 1 imaginary engagement. Freya sat beside me near the open forge door. Her blue sword lay across our knees. I had marked it before the dungeon. You can call this from me at any time, she said. Yes? Even while I sleep? Yes. Even if I enchant it again? Yes. She placed my hand on the hilt. Then I am trusting you every time I carry it. I could have answered with a joke. I did not. I will return it whenever you need it. Tomorrow, I may need it before I ask. The tournament final would begin at dawn. Freya tore 1 chicken leg in half and gave me the larger piece. The skin cracked. Hot butter and herbs ran over the meat. For several quiet minutes, the Empire, the Black Blade, and the arena disappeared. Then midnight bells rang. Every metal bird in the forge turned toward the academy walls. The protective barrier became red, the gates locked. Outside, hundreds of masked figures rose from the spectator camps. Inside the dungeon, Onyx laughed. Magnus's voice thundered through the emergency crystals. By authority of the Imperial Arsenal, Jace is to be detained before he reaches the sealed blade. The first explosion destroyed the tournament gate. 10,000 kilograms of iron and stone fell toward the spectator camp. I stopped the broken gate above 300 people. My full limit struck my mind and numbed both arms. Move, I said. Freya jumped onto a food cart and drew her sword. Move now! That worked. People ran from the shadow. Nina's birds guided them, Rufus burned a path, and Celia cut the red barrier with Dawn. I lowered the ruined gate after the last child escaped. The first minute of the 5th day had begun. The arena had become a prison for almost 20,000 spectators. Emergency crystals showed everything to the capital. Masked attackers entered through 6 breaches. Their red rods struck the ground together. Rufus's flames shrank to candles, healing lights vanished, and the barrier became a lid. My marked metal remained visible. They could suppress mana, but not erase ownership. That was the 4th consequence of my class. Magnus's soldiers surrounded me with an arrest chain. "By order of the arsenal, surrender!" Freya stepped between us.
He is holding up your gate. He is connected to the sealed blade.
Magnus approached.
They came because Jace awakened the weapon.
"They came because your office paid Galen to send him toward it," Nina said. Thousands heard, and the crystals turned. Magnus did not deny it. I needed to know whether the blade would respond to him. Onyx destroyed 3 kingdoms. If Jace is its master, one academy cannot contain the risk. "You could have asked," I said. "Would you have entered?" "No." "Then asking would have failed." That sentence explained him. He valued the result more than the people used to reach it. The first metal beast crossed the arena wall. 5 more followed the 6-legged black bull. Each weighed almost 4,000 kilograms. The beasts charged the spectator stance. "Decide quickly," I told Magnus. "You can arrest me, or I can save them." He hesitated before the crowd. "Save them," she ordered. Royal authority defeated inspection authority by 1 word. 12 needles marked the beasts. The red field slowed me, but I pulled 3 sideways with my full 10,000 kilogram limit. I could not hold all 6. The 4th beast reached the stands. Rufus landed on its head and drove his sword between 2 plates. "Jace!" I pulled the marked sword. It carried Rufus through the beast's neck and removed the black head. The crowd above him screamed, then cheered. Rufus climbed from the wreck. "That was my attack," he shouted. "You kept the sword!" "Good." Freya cut seals from the 5th beast while Celia split the spell over its core. Nina's copper birds entered the final beast and locked its gears. The beast stopped 1 step from a group of children. Nina stood on the wall with her control levers. 100 familiars for 600 gold, she shouted to the recording crystal. "Orders accepted after we survive." The parents cheered for the forge. Good advertising required timing. I crushed the first 3 into a wall across the largest breach. 6 victories had happened before thousands of witnesses. Students formed defense lines while teachers moved civilians beneath the stands. A voice rose from every red rod. "Bring the false king to the dungeon!" The masked leader stood on the broken tournament tower. His stone and bone armor had no metal. A crown-shaped scar covered his forehead. "Onyx belongs to the broken crown," he said. "The northern sky is opening. Only the Demon King can close it." Magnus looked at him. "The northern losses were your work. The losses were a warning. Your empire hid it." 300 rods released light. The floor split, releasing iron spiders, armored worms, and empty armor. I counted anyway. 1,840 moving metal targets. They weighed more than 60,000 kilograms against my 10,000 limit. "Your power is a key," he called. "Not a throne." The constructs attacked. Students met them across the arena. I froze 10 tons of legs, but every released group charged again. My needles marked targets. My coin shielded students, and lost swords returned to their owners. It was not enough. There were 20,000 people and only 10,000 kilograms of force. Then I felt the Academy's emergency grid. The red barrier had connected every registered weapon to an iron grounding web. The cult had built my mana a road. I drove the bent needle into the floor. My awareness expanded. One sword answered, then 100, then 1,000. The web reached every armory and tower. Every registered weapon became visible. The number settled at 12,480. Their combined mass was 42,000 kilograms. Beams, chains, gates, and pipes raised the connected mass above 140,000 kilograms. I only needed to mark 100,000 and hold my current limit for 1 minute. Mana left me and my knees touched the sand. Freya reached me.
What are you doing?
Taking inventory. Your hands are bleeding. Inventory is difficult. Every connection burned as I marked 30,000 kilograms. The masked leader saw the glow spread beneath the arena. Kill him. Bone warriors rushed from the tower. Celia met them with Dawn while Freya stayed beside me. Tell me what you need. 1 minute. Rufus and Nina joined our defense. At 50,000 kilograms, Freya cut one attacker, Rufus burned another, and Nina tied 3 pairs of boots together with wire. 3 cult warriors fell as one. That was not heroic, Rufus said. It worked, Nina answered. At 70,000, pain entered my chest. I called the broken gate. 10,000 kilograms of wreckage rose behind me. The gate rotated around us, sweeping constructs aside. I had reached my full active limit. Now I had to hold it. The spectators counted. At 10 breaths, I marked 80,000 kilograms. At 30, blood ran from my nose and Freya held me upright. At 50, Rufus's fire and Nina's last bird failed. I reached 100,000 marked kilograms. The condition was complete, but my awareness broke into white pieces. The entire academy counted the final breaths. 58. The masked leader broke through the wall. His bone blade moved toward my throat. Celia threw Dawn. The white sword broke his weapon above my head. 59. 60. The pressure disappeared. My active limit rose from 10,000 kilograms to 100,000. My range covered the entire academy. The gate stopped. I stood without feeling in my hands. Drop your weapons, the masked leader ordered the academy students. Good idea. I gave one command. Every metal weapon in the academy rose. 12,480 weapons and armor pieces left hands, racks, and rooms. The sky vanished behind steel. Students, teachers, soldiers, and attackers stared upward. The weapons did not fly toward me. They flew toward the center of the arena. Shields formed legs, spears formed bones, armor formed a chest, and swords became arms and a head. The Academy's entire arsenal assembled into a steel golem more than 30 meters tall. Nina looked up at it. The left shoulder is uneven. I moved 20 shields. Better, she said. The golem opened furnace door eyes. 20,000 spectators shouted my name. The sound struck harder than magic. The masked leader raised his rods. 1,840 constructs attacked the golem. It stepped forward. On foot crushed empty armor. One hand swept spiders away. Sword fingers cut red rods without touching their holders. Freya climbed a chain onto its shoulder. Rufus followed her toward the tower. Nina directed evacuation from below. Celia recovered Dawn and guarded my body. I moved the golem. 42,000 kilograms moved through thousands of marked joints like one warrior. The masked leader jumped from the tower and landed on its arm. Bone spikes entered the gaps between swords. Red magic spread through the structure. He broke the golem's right hand apart. I rebuilt it behind him, but his bone hammer broke the closing cage. Freya reached him first. He knocked Freya from the arm, but she caught a chain. Rufus attacked from the other side. His fire had returned outside the densest red field. The leader broke his sword at the center. I sent both broken halves from opposite directions. The leader blocked one. Rufus caught the other and drove it through the scar on his armor. The stone cracked. Freya pulled herself up and cut the red rod at his belt. The suppression field weakened. The golem seized him. The golem held him before 20,000 witnesses. The leader laughed inside the metal fingers. You still do not understand. We did not come to free Onyx. The dungeon shook. We came to make him hear you. Ancient swords and spears tore from the crypt. Chains broke and the arena floor opened. A black blade rose among them. Onyx swallowed light along its edge. Broken chains trailed from its guard. The blade stopped before my face. Every metal object in the academy bowed. Onyx spoke aloud. I have returned, my king. The crystals carried the words to the capital. Magnus went pale. The masked leader smiled. Now the Empire knows. He expected panic. I gave Onyx one order. Cut the red core beneath the arena. The black sword vanished and split the hidden core. The red barrier shattered. Sunrise fire and healing magic returned. The golem tightened its hand. The masked leader's smile disappeared. You are not the Demon King. I never said I was. Then why does the blade obey you? Metal has good judgment. I threw him into the center of the arena. The golem threw him into a weapon cage. Guards closed non-metal restraints. The crowd and capital saw his defeat. The cult dropped its rods. Magnus did not. He held an emergency decree and raised the gold key at his throat. Onyx is a forbidden relic. Jace is under arsenal custody. Soldiers, seize him. No soldier moved against the people who had saved them. Magnus struck the decree with his seal. His ceremonial sword cut the decree in half, pinned it to the wall, and hovered before Celia. The inspector's gold key tore from his collar and landed at her feet. Magnus stood without weapon, seal, or obedience before 20,000 people. Princess Celia picked up the key. Inspector Magnus, your secret payment created the route used by the cult. Your order is suspended pending royal judgment. Guards removed his black coat. Nina pointed at the steel golem. Magnus's ceremonial shield had become a bright plate above its head. It is wearing his shield as a hat, she said. The spectators laughed. Magnus looked up. The golem tilted its head. That ended his remaining dignity. The attack was over before the sun cleared the eastern wall. Thousands of weapons hovered in rows while I returned each one to its owner. Freya caught her blue blade and looked at me. Trust returned should be visible. My hands still did not move. Healers carried me to the forge where Nina cooked while they worked. By afternoon, dark ginger beef broth, thin noodles, fried dumplings, and honey cakes covered the table. Rufus ate 3 bowls and claimed fire magic consumed energy. Celia wrote arrest orders between bites. Nina calculated repairs on Magnus's contract. Freya sat beside me. Feeling would return in several days. Freya held the bowl while I drank. This is humiliating, I said. 20,000 people watched you lift an army. You can survive 1 bowl. Rufus is watching. He looked away and placed an entire dumpling in his mouth. Freya smiled. She wiped broth from my cheek, then kissed the same place. Rufus choked. Nina hit his back with a spoon. Celia kept writing. Only Freya sat beside me, and the answer was clear.
At sunset, the academy held a ceremony in the damaged arena. The board placed my name first and granted the title Defender of the Academy. Celia announced 3,000 gold. Nina received the familiar contract, Rufus a defense command, and Freya recognition as our finest swordswoman. My strength had risen from 3 grams to 100,000 kilograms in 5 days.
My money had risen from 6 copper coins to more than 3,000 gold. My status had risen from last place to a name shouted across the capital. Every step had witnesses. Galen lost his office, Magnus his authority, and the masked leader his freedom. The battle for the academy was complete. Onyx hovered in Celia's non-metal chains because I had ordered him to allow them. I faced the black blade before the crowd. You called me the Demon King. I called you my king. Explain the difference. The sword turned toward the dark northern mountains. The old Demon King was never my true master. He stole me and copied a fragment of the Metal Emperor's authority. The system had given me the original authority. Onyx continued. Your awakening was heard by every imperial weapon made from my master's fallen throne. The earth trembled. Crystals showed blades leaving museums, vaults, and old battlefields across the empire. Millions of metal objects pointed toward me. Students stopped cheering. Celia lowered her pen. Onyx's voice entered every blade at once. The throne has recognized its emperor. Far beneath the northern mountains, something enormous opened two metal eyes. The Imperial Arsenal sent 5 words. Capture Jace before the weapons march. I looked at the 12,480 Academy weapons waiting around the arena. Then I looked at Freya. She drew her sword. This time, she did not ask whether I would take it. She asked a better question. How many can you control now? Every blade in the Academy rose behind me. Enough to begin.